Have you ever stopped to ponder if this world is actually one giant prison? A chilling question, isn't it? Yet, it's a concept that was seriously proposed by the 19th century philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. See, Schopenhauer had a rather bleak perspective on life. In his view, each of us is an inmate, an unwilling inhabitant of a world that we didn't choose to be a part of. He argued that we're all shackled by the constraints of time and space, trapped within the confines of our own existence. We can't just pack up and leave this world whenever we fancy. Oh no, we're stuck here until our term ends, or until we, in one way or another, decide to end it ourselves. But what makes this existential prison truly unsettling is the constant stream of suffering that each day brings forth. Tragedy, anxiety, unhappiness. They're our daily bread in this penitentiary of existence. Each sunrise and sunset, every ticking second, brings us closer to the inevitable end, to death. And within these limits, within these walls of mortality, we're subjected to a relentless onslaught of pain and hardship. It's a grim view, isn't it? Yet there's a certain poignancy in its stark honesty. Schopenhauer wasn't trying to sugarcoat life, to paint a rosy picture of a world that's often anything but. He was presenting life as he saw it. A prison, a place of unchosen existence and unending suffering. In the grand scheme of things, we're all prisoners, each serving our time, each grappling with our own pains and struggles. It's a perspective that might seem cold, even harsh, but it's one that forces us to confront the realities of our existence, to truly grapple with the human condition. Now that we've set up this rather bleak view of existence, let's delve into the mind of the man who proposed it. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. Arthur Schopenhauer, a name synonymous with the philosophy of pessimism. A figure who loomed large in the 19th century, Schopenhauer was born in 1788 in the city of Danzig, now known as Gdansk in Poland. He was a philosopher who was heavily influenced by the works of Immanuel Kant and the Upanishads, texts of Hindu philosophy. These influences led him to develop his own philosophy, one that was deeply rooted in the belief that life is more suffering than joy. Schopenhauer's life was not without its own share of hardship. His father's death, which some speculate to have been a suicide, and a tempestuous relationship with his mother, a popular novelist, perhaps shaped his bleak outlook on life. He spent his life in relative obscurity, his ideas gaining recognition only in the later years of his life. Schopenhauer's philosophy is a journey into the darker side of human existence. He posited that the world is driven by a ceaseless and insatiable desire, or will. This will is blind and irrational, and it is the source of all our suffering. We are forever prisoners of this will, shackled by our desires and needs. Happiness, in Schopenhauer's view, is merely the absence of suffering, a brief respite in a life filled with pain and want. His ideas were revolutionary and ahead of his time, exerting a profound influence on later thinkers. Friedrich Nietzsche, Richard Wagner, Sigmund Freud, Albert Einstein, all acknowledged the weight of Schopenhauer's philosophy on their own work. Even today, his ideas resonate, offering a lens through which we can view the human condition in all its raw and often painful reality. Schopenhauer's philosophy paints a grim picture of existence, but bear with us as we delve deeper into his thoughts. The world may be a prison, and life may be filled with suffering, but as we will see, there's more to Schopenhauer's philosophy than meets the eye. It's a journey into the heart of our existence, a voyage that promises to be as enlightening as it is challenging. Let's continue this exploration together. At the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy is the idea that life is suffering. Arthur Schopenhauer's worldview was undoubtedly stark. He saw life not as a joyous journey, but as a constant struggle marked by suffering. This led him to theorize that the key to understanding existence is not in the pursuit of happiness, but in the reduction of suffering. For Schopenhauer, life was akin to a pendulum that swings between pain and boredom. When we're not suffering, we're bored, and when we're not bored, we're suffering. This is because he saw desire as the root cause of all suffering. We desire something, we strive for it, and when we achieve it, we either desire something else or fall into a state of boredom. Schopenhauer's philosophy also hinged on the idea of the will. He believed that this will a blind, irrational force, drives all of nature, including us. It is this will that fuels our desires, keeps us in a state of constant striving, and subsequently, constant suffering. But don't lose heart just yet. Schopenhauer also proposed a way out of this cycle of suffering. He theorized that by renouncing desires and reducing our wants, we could mitigate our suffering. This is where he diverges from many other philosophers, who often place happiness and pleasure as the ultimate goals of life. Schopenhauer, on the other hand, argued that the best we can hope for is to minimize our suffering. This perspective might seem bleak, but it's worth noting that Schopenhauer's philosophy isn't about wallowing in despair. It's about understanding the nature of life and finding ways to navigate it with as little suffering as possible. Schopenhauer's philosophy also offers a unique perspective on happiness. According to him, happiness is not a state that we achieve. Instead, it's merely the absence of suffering. When we're not in pain or not desiring something we don't have, we experience what we call happiness. But this state is transient and fragile, always at the mercy of the next desire that takes hold of us. In essence, Schopenhauer proposed a radical rethinking of how we view life. He asked us to shift our focus from pursuing happiness to mitigating suffering, from trying to satisfy our endless desires to learning to live with fewer wants. He urged us to see that our constant striving for more is the root cause of our suffering, and that the key to a less painful existence lies in taming this relentless will. So while Schopenhauer's philosophy might seem gloomy, it also offers a pragmatic and perhaps even liberating perspective on life. It's a reminder that our endless pursuit of happiness might be a futile endeavor, and that perhaps the best we can do is to try and alleviate our suffering. In Schopenhauer's view, our existence is characterized by suffering, and any moments of happiness or pleasure are merely brief reprieves from this default state. So how exactly is life similar to a prison according to Schopenhauer? This is the question we're going to delve into now. Schopenhauer's philosophy, dark and brooding as it may be, paints a vivid picture of life as a prison. We are born into this world without choice, without a say in where we are, who we are, or how we are. Just like a prisoner, we find ourselves thrust into existence, constrained by the bars of time and the confines of our circumstances. The philosopher argued that our existence is characterized by suffering, with every day bringing us closer to our inevitable end. It's as if we're serving a life sentence, with each ticking moment echoing the footsteps of a prison guard on a cold stone floor. We are the inmates, and death, the final release. Schopenhauer's philosophy deftly draws parallels between life and a prison. Consider the limitations we face. Just as prisoners are confined by the physical walls of their cells, we too are confined. Our constraints might not be physical walls, but they are just as real. We are bound by the chains of time, trapped within the confines of our own minds, limited by the people around us, and restricted by societal norms and expectations. And then there is the element of choice, or rather, the lack thereof. Just like prisoners, we did not choose to be here. We did not choose our families, our bodies, our minds, or our circumstances. We are thrust into this world without consent, left to navigate the labyrinth of life as best we can. Moreover, we cannot leave until our term ends. We are bound to this existence until death comes calling, much like a prisoner waiting for their sentence to be over. Schopenhauer suggests that we can choose to end our sentence prematurely, a grim nod towards suicide. This comparison may be grim, but it offers a unique perspective on the human condition. Schopenhauer's philosophy, while gloomy, encourages a critical examination of our existence, pushing us to question, to probe, and to challenge the status quo. It may not be the most comforting of philosophies, but it certainly is thought-provoking. So, what can we take away from Schopenhauer's prison of existence? This train of thought leads us to revisit the main points we've discussed. The 19th century philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer drew an uncanny parallel between life and a prison, emphasizing our lack of choice in being here, and the inevitability of suffering, tragedy, anxiety, and unhappiness within the confines of our existence. This perspective, while somber, offers a unique lens through which we can view the human condition. It forces us to confront the harsh realities of life, yet it also pushes us to seek ways to reduce suffering and find meaning within our limitations. Schopenhauer's philosophy may not be a recipe for happiness, but it does provide a profound understanding of the world we inhabit. It challenges us to question the nature of existence and our place within it. In the end, whether life is a prison or a playground may depend on our perspective. But one thing's for certain, Schopenhauer's philosophy compels us to examine our existence in a whole new light.